You've probably felt it before, the intoxicating pull of being in love, the way someone's presence can light up your whole day, how their texts, their laugh, their touch make you feel alive in a way that almost nothing else can. It's thrilling, it's addictive, and for a while, it feels like you've finally found the missing piece of your life. But here's the part no one tells you. Love has a sneaky way of making you forget yourself. If you're not careful, you start adjusting, you start bending, you start giving more of yourself than you realize. And before you know it, you've poured so much into the other person that you can barely remember where you end and they begin. You may not notice it at first. It starts in little ways, skipping a workout to spend time with them, brushing off plans with friends because you don't want to miss a moment, or silencing your own needs to avoid rocking the boat. At first it feels harmless, even sweet. Isn't that what love is about? Sacrifice, compromise, but slowly, the sacrifices turn into a pattern, and the pattern turns into a way of life. You wake up one day realizing that you're living more for them than for yourself. Your identity, your joy, your energy, it's all wrapped up in them. And yet, deep down, something in you feels off. You feel restless, or anxious, or resentful, without fully knowing why. You keep telling yourself that love is supposed to be about giving, that you're just being devoted. But if you're honest, you feel drained. You're scared that if you pull back, they might think you don't care. You're afraid that if you put yourself first, you'll push them away. So you keep giving, hoping it will secure the love you're terrified to lose. The truth is, love without balance turns into dependency, and dependency is the slow erosion of who you are. When you lose yourself in someone else, you don't just risk your happiness, you risk the very thing that made that person fall for you in the first place. Think about it. They were drawn to your individuality, your energy, your spark. But if you smother that spark for the sake of keeping love alive, what's left? You become a shadow of yourself, and the relationship, no matter how much you fight for it, starts to feel heavy instead of joyful. The most heartbreaking part is when you realize that losing yourself doesn't make someone love you more. It only makes you resent yourself. You start questioning why you feel so unseen, why your needs don't matter, why you're exhausted even when you're giving your best. And if you keep ignoring those feelings, resentment builds. It shows up in arguments that come out of nowhere, in quiet withdrawals, in a gnawing emptiness that no amount of affection can fill. But here's what you need to hear. You don't have to choose between loving someone deeply and staying true to yourself. It's not either or. The healthiest, most magnetic kind of love isn't about abandoning yourself. It's about bringing your full self into the relationship. Love isn't supposed to erase you. It's supposed to expand you. It's supposed to create a space where two complete people share their lives without losing the core of who they are. Imagine this for a moment. Instead of shrinking to fit into a relationship, you grow inside it. Instead of bending so much that you forget your own shape, you stand firm and still get to experience intimacy, passion, and connection. Picture being able to say what you feel without fear, to chase your goals without guilt, to nurture your friendships without apology, and still be loved fiercely by the person you're with. That's not selfish. That's the foundation of real, lasting love. The problem is, somewhere along the way, you may have been taught the opposite. Maybe you grew up believing that love meant selflessness to the point of self-erasure. Maybe past relationships trained you to think that the only way to hold on to someone was to keep giving, even when it hurt. Maybe you've been afraid that the moment you stop overgiving, the love will disappear. But love that demands you to lose yourself isn't love. It's control, fear, or dependency, dressed up as devotion. When you begin to reclaim yourself in love, everything changes. Your energy shifts. You stop clinging and start choosing. You stop waiting for someone else to validate your worth. And you carry it with you wherever you go. And here's the paradox. When you stop losing yourself in love, you actually become more attractive. Confidence, self-respect, boundaries, these are magnetic. They create desire, not distance. So ask yourself, where have you been disappearing? Where in your relationship have you been silencing your truth, sacrificing too much, or ignoring your needs just to keep the peace? Because that's where your power is leaking. And until you confront it, you'll keep giving more of yourself away than you can afford. But today you get to make a different choice. You get to decide that loving someone and loving yourself are not opposites. They're partners. You get to build a kind of relationship that's not fueled by fear of loss, but by mutual respect and freedom. And that starts with you remembering who you are, honoring what you need, and showing up fully without apology. Love without losing yourself isn't just possible. It's the only kind of love that can last. Think about the times you've held back your truth because you didn't want to upset them. Maybe you wanted to say no to something but said yes instead. Maybe you wanted to admit how you felt but swallowed it down. Each time it seemed easier in the moment. You avoided conflict, you kept the peace, you protected the connection. But what you didn't realize is that every silence chipped away at your sense of self. Every swallowed word was like giving away a piece of your power. And over time, that silence becomes a habit. You become someone who tiptoes through love, who edits themselves just to be accepted, who carries the unspoken fear that being fully yourself might be too much. But you need to see what that really costs you. Because when you mute your own voice, you start living a smaller version of your life. You become half of yourself in a relationship that was supposed to feel whole. You think you're protecting the love, but really you're starving it. Love cannot thrive in dishonesty, even if that dishonesty looks polite. When you hide what's real inside you, you're not giving the other person the chance to love the true you. You're only giving them a version that's edited, watered down, incomplete. And then when they don't meet your unspoken needs, resentment brews. It feels like they don't see you, but how could they, if you never showed them? This is where you have to ask yourself a hard question. Are you more afraid of losing them or of losing yourself? Because one of those losses is temporary, but the other could take years to repair. Losing someone hurts, but losing yourself in the process of keeping them, that's devastation on a different level. That's the kind of hurt that lingers long after the relationship ends, when you look back and wonder how you let yourself fade so far from who you were. And here's the shift you need to make. Love isn't about choosing between them and you. It's about learning how to hold both. It's about realizing that your needs, your dreams, your truth are not threats to the relationship, they're fuel for it. When you own what you feel, when you honor what you need, you don't push love away. You give it a chance to become deeper, stronger, more honest. Picture yourself in a relationship where you don't have to hide, where you can say no without guilt, ask for what you need without fear, and disagree without thinking it will destroy the connection. Imagine the relief of not performing, not pretending, not bending yourself into something you're not. That's not selfishness, that's intimacy. Because intimacy is not about perfection, it's about being seen and accepted as you really are, not as a version you created to stay safe. And yes, it takes courage, because showing up fully means risking rejection. It means saying, this is who I am, this is what I need, this is what I believe, and giving the other person the choice to meet you there. That's terrifying, because it means you can't control the outcome. But here's the secret. You never had control anyway. You can't force someone to love you by sacrificing yourself. You can only invite them to love the real you. And if they can't, then at least you're free to keep being yourself, free to find a love that can hold the weight of your truth. You've probably had moments when you sensed this. Maybe you were in a relationship where you started giving more and more, and yet nothing you did was enough. Or maybe you've been in a love where you lost touch with your passions, your friendships, your sense of independence, and instead of feeling cherished, you felt invisible. Those weren't accidents, they were signals. They were reminders that love without boundaries doesn't lead to closeness, it leads to emptiness. So how do you begin reclaiming yourself without losing the relationship? It starts with small, brave steps. You don't have to flip a switch overnight. Start with telling the truth in moments where you'd normally hide it. Start with saying no when your body screams no, even if your mouth wants to say yes. Start with honoring one commitment to yourself, whether that's time for your work, your health, your friendships, and holding it sacred. These may seem like little things, but they rebuild the muscle of self-respect. And the more you practice, the more you realize that loving someone doesn't require you to abandon yourself. You'll notice something incredible when you do this. The people who genuinely love you will respect. They may be surprised at first, they may even resist. But over time, they'll realize that your boundaries make you stronger, not distant. They'll see that your independence isn't rejection, it's attraction. Because nothing is more magnetic than someone who knows who they are and isn't afraid to live it. And on the other side, the people who can't handle your truth, who only stay when you're giving more than you get, those people will fall away. And though it might hurt, it's also clarity. It's life's way of showing you who was there for the real you, and who was only there for what you could give them. The love you deserve is the kind that celebrates your individuality, not erases it. The kind that doesn't demand that you trade your identity for their comfort. The kind that allows you to stand tall in your own life and still walk hand in hand with someone else. That love is possible, but it begins with you daring to stop disappearing. So ask yourself now, if you were to stop losing yourself in love, what would change? What would you reclaim? Your voice, your energy, your passions, your peace, because that's the life waiting for you. And the moment you decide you are worth as much as the love you give, everything begins to shift. You've probably been taught, in one way or another, that love is proven through sacrifice. That if you really care, you'll go the extra mile, you'll bend further, you'll give more. And yes, love is generous. But here's the part no one tells you. Generosity without boundaries becomes self-betrayal. If you give without limit, eventually what you're offering isn't love anymore, it's exhaustion. It's a version of yourself that's running on empty, hoping someone will finally notice and refill what you've been pouring out. And this is where many people find themselves stuck. You tell yourself that if you just give more, they'll appreciate you. If you just stay patient, they'll change. If you just sacrifice a little longer, the relationship will turn into what you dream it can be. But ask yourself, how long have you been waiting? How much more of yourself are you willing to trade in the hope that one day it will all balance out? Because what you're hoping for isn't actually love, it's rescue. It's the fantasy that someone else will hand back to you the pieces you willingly gave away. But here's the reality, no one else can give you back what you abandoned, only you can. And the moment you realize that, you stop waiting. You stop living in the future fantasy, and you start reclaiming yourself now. Because love without self-respect isn't love. It's dependency wrapped in devotion. Now imagine a different kind of dynamic. One where you don't need to prove your worth through constant giving. One where your no carries as much weight as your yes. One where you are valued not just for what you provide, but for who you are. That's what it looks like when you love without losing yourself. And the truth is, when you live this way, your relationships actually become more stable. Why? Because they're not built on fear. They're not powered by the silent desperation of "I hope they don't leave." They're built on choice. Two people who choose each other freely, not because one is clinging and the other is tolerating, but because both are standing strong, whole, and willing. Think about the times you've admired someone, not because they gave endlessly, but because they carried themselves with confidence, because they knew what they wanted, because they respected themselves enough not to settle for less. That's the energy that draws you in, and that's the same energy you create when you stop losing yourself. You become magnetic, not through sacrifice, but through self-possession. But here's the challenge. Reclaiming yourself means you have to face the fears that kept you small in the first place. The fear of being abandoned, the fear of being called selfish, the fear of being unloved if you're not constantly pleasing. These fears are powerful, and they can convince you that disappearing is safer than being seen. But safety at the cost of your soul isn't safety at all. It's slow destruction. And the longer you live in those fears, the further you drift from the love you actually crave. So how do you confront those fears without letting them control you? You start by remembering this. Your worth doesn't come from being chosen. It doesn't come from being approved of or validated or kept. Your worth is inherent. It was there before them, and it will be there after them. And when you begin to believe that, even in small moments, the fears lose their grip. Suddenly, you don't need to twist yourself into knots to keep someone around. You realize that the right person doesn't need you to shrink. They need you to shine. And here's the paradox you'll notice. When you stop betraying yourself for love, you don't lose people who matter. You lose people who were never really there. The ones who only loved the version of you that served them will fade. And though it stings at first, it's actually freed. It's space for someone who can meet the real you. But even deeper than that, something inside you begins to heal. Because the moment you stop abandoning yourself, you stop living in contradiction. You stop carrying the silent resentment of "I'm giving everything, but I feel empty." You start living in alignment. Your actions match your truth. And alignment feels like peace. Alignment feels like freedom. Alignment feels like coming home to yourself after years of being lost. Think about the power in that. To love someone fully, to care deeply, to give generously, but never at the expense of yourself. To be able to say, "I love you, and I love me too." That's not arrogance. That's balance. That's the foundation of every healthy, passionate, lasting relationship. Because love without self is a performance, but love with self is presence. And presence is what makes love real. It's what allows you to look someone in the eye and connect deeply, not because you're hiding who you are, but because you're finally showing up as your whole self. You may wonder though, what if standing in my truth pushes them away? What if honoring myself creates distance? And here's the answer you need to hold on to. If your truth pushes someone away, they were never meant to stay. The love that lasts isn't afraid of your boundary. It isn't threatened by your independence. It isn't weakened by your authenticity. The love that lasts is the one that says, "I see you. I hear you. I love you for exactly who you are." So take a breath and let yourself imagine it. What your relationship could look like if you stopped losing yourself. What would shift if you trusted your worth? If you set the boundaries you've been afraid to set? If you spoke the truths you've been swallowing? Picture the weight that would lift, the closeness that would deepen, the freedom that would return. That's not a fantasy. It's available to you. But it begins with a choice. The choice to stop making yourself smaller in the name of love. The choice to stop chasing love at the expense of yourself. The choice to believe that you can be fully you and fully loved at the same time. Because the reality is, love doesn't ask you to vanish. It asks you to show up. And the more you show up as yourself, the more powerful your love becomes. Not weaker, not riskier, stronger, realer, lasting. By now, you've started to see it clearly. Loving someone doesn't mean disappearing inside them. It doesn't mean abandoning your needs, your passions, your voice. Real love, the kind that lasts, asks for something far more powerful: your presence. And presence can only come when you're rooted in yourself. Think about it. When you lose yourself in love, your energy changes. You're anxious, always second-guessing, always monitoring, trying to read the signals, trying to adjust so you don't lose what you're desperate to keep. That's not love. That's survival. And relationships built on survival aren't fulfilling. They're draining. You end up with connection that feels like a constant test instead of a place of rest. But when you stay anchored in yourself, love feels different. Suddenly, you're not begging for scraps of attention. You're sharing your fullness. You're not terrified of being abandoned. You know you'll still be whole even if someone leaves. You're not performing, you're simply showing up. And that energy is magnetic. It draws the right person in, not because you're bending over backward, but because you're standing in your truth. Now let's get practical. How do you actually live this way? How do you love without losing yourself when so much of your conditioning has told you otherwise? It starts with 3 commitments you make to yourself. First, you commit to listening to your own voice. That means when something feels off, you don't dismiss it. When you want something, you don't bury it. When your body says no, you trust it. Your intuition has always been speaking to you. You just have to start honoring it instead of overriding it in the name of keeping someone else happy. Second, you commit to protecting your boundaries. Not walls, not avoidance, Boundaries. The lines that keep you safe, respected, and whole. Boundaries are not about pushing people away. They're about teaching them how to love you. They're about saying, this is what I can give. This is what I can't. And this is how I need to be treated if we're going to thrive together. Without boundaries, love becomes chaos. With them, love becomes clarity. And third, you commit to nurturing your individuality. That means your passions, your friendships, your growth, your joy. It means remembering that your life is bigger than any one relationship. When you keep feeding the parts of you that make you feel alive, you bring a richness into love that nothing else can match. You're not asking your partner to be your entire world, because you've built a world within yourself first. And that world is exactly what makes love exciting, fresh, and alive. When you start living this way, you'll notice the shift. You'll stop being afraid of losing someone because you'll realize you can never lose yourself again. You'll stop holding on to relationships that drain you, because you'll finally see that love without respect isn't love at all. And you'll start experiencing a kind of connection that feels lighter, freer, more joyful, because it's built on truth instead of fear. And maybe deep down, that's what you've been longing for all along. Not just to be loved, but to be loved as you. Not for your sacrifices, not for your compliance, not for how much of yourself you can give away, but for your full, authentic presence. For the person you are when you stop performing, when you stop shrinking, when you stop pretending. That kind of love doesn't just make you feel chosen, it makes you feel seen. And there is nothing more powerful than that. But here's the final reminder you need. This begins with you. No one else can do it for you. No one else can hand you back the self you've lost. That's your responsibility. And yes, it's hard. Yes, it's scary. But it's also the most liberating choice you will ever make. Because once you decide that you will never again abandon yourself for love, you set yourself free. Free from the cycles of overgiving. Free from the fear of rejection. Free from the quiet resentment of living half a life. From that place of freedom, love becomes what it was always meant to be. A choice, not a chain. An expansion, not a cage. A space where two whole people walk side by side, not two half versions clinging out of fear. That's the love you deserve. That's the love that will last. So as you move forward, carry this truth with you. The greatest gift you can give to any relationship is not your sacrifice, it's your wholeness. It's the courage to stand in your truth, the strength to honor your needs, and the willingness to love someone deeply without ever abandoning yourself. Because when you love without losing yourself, you don't just keep the relationship alive, you keep yourself alive within it. And that is the only way love can truly last.